Okay, everyone, today we're going to finish learning about the bass clef by going over the ledger lines. Remember, the ledger lines allow us to extend our note range above and below the staff, so now we can go up and above, and we can go down on below. But before we do that, I already have our bass clef line and space notes on the staff. Remember, in bass clef, we start with G, and as we go up, it's good, boys, do, fine, always. And our spaces are all cows eat grass. And remember, we're always going up alphabetically. So when we get to G, we have to start back over at A. So we have G and then A, and then you just keep going up alphabetically. B, C, D, E, F, G. And again, once we get to G, we start back over at A. And then if we're going to go above the staff, this is a line note, so our next note has to be a space note if we're going in alphabetical order. So it's going to be B. Now you're going to see that this doesn't have a ledger line. You have to remember that the first space note above and below the staff do not require ledger lines. So that's why we don't have ledger lines for B or ledger lines for F. The further up we go, then we have to add ledger lines. So our first ledger line note after B comes C, and that is a line note because it has the line going through it. If we keep going higher than that, we're going to go to D, and this is considered a space note. You have to remember that the reason we need that ledger line is so that we don't get confused with the position of it. Because if you have this entire space down here, I'm actually going to read it as a B because B doesn't have a ledger line above the staff, but D requires one so that I know that it's D and not B. If we keep going above D, after D in the alphabet comes E. And this one has to have two ledger lines. You have to remember that when we're going above the staff, once we get past C and D and we keep going up, they're going to need more ledger lines so we don't get them confused with the other notes. Because if I didn't have that ledger line underneath it, it would actually just look like C. And that's how I would read it. So we have to make sure we have the correct number of ledger lines. All right, now we're going to go down to our notes that go below the staff. You have to remember that whenever we're going down, we're going backwards in the alphabet. So before G comes F. And this is a space note again, and this is the first one, so it doesn't need a ledger line underneath it. If we keep going below F, we're going to need a ledger line. And before F in the alphabet comes E. So if we're going in alphabetical order, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, A, B, etc. So we always have to keep in mind that we're going in alphabetical order. We're going backwards in the alphabet if we're moving below the staff and going down. And this one again is a line note because it's got the line going through it. If we keep going below, our note is now going to be below the ledger line, and this one is going to be D. Same thing for C. Now that we're past D, we have to add a second ledger line. And it's the same as before. Whenever we're going below the bass clef staff, notes are going to be required to have more than one ledger line in order to be read as what they actually are. Otherwise, if we don't have that ledger line above it, we're going to have all this space here, and I'm actually going to read it as E. So we have to be really, really careful with that.